Hi, this is Ishan Awastin and he's studying. So bad that he's in 3rd grade for the 2nd time. Great, but not because he spends all day climbing trees and fooling around. The boy doesn't even have any friends to find out why. To find out why he's having all this trouble, and the US and his parents have yet to find out. In the most unexpected circumstances. This is what a typical school day looks like. He's listening to the results of his tests and learns that he got the worst grades in the whole class. He's yelled at by all the teachers and counselors, and his peers shun him because leads you on, and chances are, oddly enough, she's still a kid who laughs at the sight of yard dogs and plays with them for long periods of time in the yard, but completely oblivious to the fact that school tests are not to be used as a toy. He forgets to wash his hands before he eats, to shut off the faucet, to give his parents his work to signature. But the boy's brother Johan is the opposite. He's the best in all subjects. Parents' pride, you'd think he'd be the US, but he doesn't like it, but that's not the case. The brother seems to be the only one who doesn't. Swearing at the boy. You almost packed him up one day completely forgetting his lessons, and Chan runs outside to the street to the barking dogs in the yard while he's dealing with the neighborhood boys are playing catch. Falls near them. Ask him to throw the ball back, but even chance misses. It's an unbelievable trace of the ringleader of the company, who orders the boy to bring the ball back to the court. Stop staring at me with a beer and a sword. Isan doesn't know how to react to such aggression, and just keeps quiet, which makes the bully even angrier. The bully even more between the two of them. A fight ensues from which both Shan and Tu gets out of it and goes home. He comes home in tears, abrasions, and beatings, but with a kite he accidentally caught. Only trouble awaits him before he even crosses the threshold of the apartment. From down the hallway, he hears his roommate complaining to his mom about him breaking all her flowers. Turns out that neighbor is the mom of the bully who's been bullying him. Nadia, the kid, brazenly lies to us in front of his parents that Ishan beat him up. They almost get into a fight again, and the grown boy's parents leave from the family home. Oh, you two, for goodness sake, get away from him and share a joint that go a month. The father gives his son a hard time. He says that everyone complains about them every day. Ishan's mom, on the other hand, takes pity on her son. She washes his wounds and calms him down. The next morning their father is away on a business trip for a few days. The boy's mom manages to set the table twice. The table, send her husband to work and her older brother to school, and only then remembers about the younger one, who in the meantime is sleeping sweetly in her bed to get the child ready for school. To get the kid ready for school, his mom has to constantly to distract him from his fantasies and naughty things. Every day at school, and Shana is waiting. Another challenge while everyone listens to the teacher. The boy stares mesmerized at the window and thinks about something of his own, and when the teacher calls out to him and asks him to read a sentence, he fails. And the chance he declares that the letters in the textbook are dancing in front of him and he's being made fun of. And the teacher just doesn't believe him and yells, but Ishan has his own unusual response to this behavior. Loud and clear. Ishan is kicked out of the class, and in the next lesson he realizes that he hasn't done his math homework or signed his parents' test papers. The boy in despair finds nothing better than to run away to the city, where he observes street vendors, painters, builders, and simple pedestrians enjoying the solitude and the tranquility of home, and the chance to spend all his free time painting, and when the time comes to check her homework, only listening to his mom lecture him. She doesn't understand how he could have misspelled all the words in his notebook, and she's sure that her son to repeat a year in the middle of the night, and Chan starts wailing about how walking alone is dangerous because he could get hit by a car or kidnapped, but what's done is done. What's done is done, and now she's got a brother. Please explain to me about the linen. Let's write to Johan, and he refuses at first. But he can't refuse his brother. He writes an explanatory note in such neat handwriting that at school the school teacher doesn't even notice the deception. She gives the whole class a math quiz. Math quizzes that will affect the entire semester, but instead of working on examples like the rest of the kids, Ishan imagines in his head about some cosmic adventure and solves just one problem. Wrong. Soon Daddy eats it. Comes back from a business trip. His son can't be happy about his father's arrival, but the fun doesn't last long, but suddenly Mr. Avastin and walks on the floor. Something Interesting. Here's an explanatory abs with your signature cheating and hiding under the by his father's screams and Chan spills the whole truth about how he's been walking around town by himself instead of sitting in. But that's not all the bad news that the distraught parents are about to learn. A couple days later, they end up at the principal's office where teachers and Shana about his terrible grades. It turns out he hasn't made any progress. He hasn't made any progress and he's still making the same mistakes. The parents find out that Ishan hasn't brought signing the checklist. The principal takes the floor. She insinuates that if this continues, to keep the boy in school. They don't intend to keep the boy in school, they'd rather send him to a specialized institution. The shift thinks my son is mentally retarded, so I'm gonna put him in a special. The father doesn't even want to hear about sending them to an institution for children with special needs, so that same night. The same night he calls a friend of his and arranges to transfer his son to a boarding school for boys. His wife tries to talk him out of it because his son has never, ever been away from his family. Let's just send him off to another school in the middle of the school year. It's a huge stress, but the father stands his ground. He's not even convinced by his youngest son's uncontrollable tears. His youngest son will spend the next few weeks is plagued by nightmares and constantly urging his mom not to let his parents to send him to boarding school. It seems like something is about to take pity on his son, but once again, he gets into trouble again, throwing himself at the neighborhood bully with a firecracker. A little time passes and he finally finds himself in a huge school building where the students are required. The students are required to be strict and obedience and order, only to begin a new life in which he is no less alone than in his old one. The boy cries all the time and can't to understand why his parents abandoned him. Meanwhile, his mom at home can't find a place for herself. She finds drawings of her son where he draws himself apart. At his last school, now he's being scolded not only for his poor grades, but also for not knowing how to tie his own tie. In class, the boy is seated with the best student in the class. Trying to cheer Ishan up, he tells his new friend that this is a school of punishment for everyone, so even here you can find some good things, but it's hard to find. Good things are hard to find when everyone around you yelling at you, kids laughing, and the art teacher beats students for bad grades with a ruler. So Ishan only more withdrawn when I first come to visit his parents. First time I go to visit my parents, he runs away to the playground and refuses to talk to them. He doesn't even enjoy the set of watercolors that Johan gives him to go to school. The boy doesn't want to go to class anymore, especially his art class. But it turns out that the old evil teacher has been sent to New Zealand and is replaced by a new teacher. Rajan happily takes Ishan to class without even realizing what a surprise awaits them ahead. The new teacher is not like the others. He shows up to class with a flute and in a circus performer, singing songs with the kids and asking them to draw whatever pops into their heads. But not only does he not only doesn't look at the fun performance, he refuses to pick up paints. The next day the art teacher chases up Rajan and asks him why his desk mate really wants to go home because he's new here and he wonders where it is. A kid gets transferred to a new in the middle of the school year, but Rajan tells him that his friend just can't write or read, so he was basically kicked out of that school. Ram runs to the teacher's lounge to look at their notebooks, and she can't believe her eyes. The same word the boy writes three different ways. Ram later goes to work at the specialized school where he works. Most of the time, he shares with his coworker that he met a boy on the internet. A boy who looks just like him with tears in his eyes. The temple tells him that this boy doesn't speak a word, but his eyes look like he's begging for help. After a moment of thought, Ram decides to go to his parents and Shana's house to talk to them about everything. Of drawings. He wonders who the author is. Mom sees them, she says it's her youngest son. He can't believe his ears. In his lessons the boy didn't draw a line in the frame. He asks his parents, but why did they send him so far away? The father begins to lament that they had no other choice. The son is naughty and lazy, and otherwise he wouldn't have finished third grade again. Nora doesn't. He agrees. He thinks that all these symptoms, they are the cause. The teacher explains That there's a pattern to the boy's mistakes. Still convinced it's just an excuse. Then the frames ask Mr. Abasti to read the box description in Chinese. And when he says he can't, he scolds him, even though this is where all these cars encountered every day. Mr. Ram says it's because Mr. Xiong is dyslexic that he has a hard time not only to read and write, but also to do small everyday tasks like tying his tie or his sneakers is difficult to even imagine how he feels. Especially since there's no one supporting the boy. Maybe that's why he stopped drawing. Ram, but Mr. You don't care much. He wants his son to be successful and normal. To Ram's point about how every children are different and Ishan has a special gift, he has nothing to say. The next day Ram brings to class a book of drawings that Shan made and secretly shows it to the boy. And then starts the class with an unusual story about a child who couldn't read or write, but even though everyone around him bullied him, he grew up to become a great man. Who is this about? Music. Ram begins to tell the children a lot of stories about famous people who weren't good with letters when they were kids. Leonardo da Vinci, Walt Disney, Pablo Picasso, Agatha Christie. The teacher said that with these stories, he wanted to show the kids that some people see the world in a completely different way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just because no one understands you doesn't mean you're no good. You're no good after that, the teacher says. Outdoors. But before he leaves the classroom, he calls their Shana over to him. He admits that he forgot to mention among the dyslexics another name, even though they know it. His own. He had the same problem as a child with reading and writing. His father thought he was a dummy, but he grew up and learned everything. He seems to have a good teacher who inspires him. Shana in class, he makes a beautiful fruit that floats on a twig and makes all his classmates in awe. Music. Ram comes to the boarding school principal and says he wants to discuss the grades. Shana, the director, already thought that the teacher came to complain like everyone else. The rest of us, turns out, is already thinking about expelling the boy. Interrupts him. He thinks the kid's intelligence. The child's intelligence is above average. Some difficulties with writing. The art teacher is proposing to the principal a plan to take Ishan and teach him writing, reading and math a few hours a week, and in the meantime, the rest of the teachers ask the rest of the teachers to quiz the boy orally. The principal doubts the success of this plan. Shana and convinces him to give the gifted boy a second chance. Well, I hope it doesn't make things worse. Rama and Shana begin individualized. They learn letters and numbers with the help of letters and numbers, colors, sand and plasticine, and the boy is rapidly beginning to show progress. Now he's not only sentences, but he also writes well and without. And he even manages to change his own clothes, tie his shoelaces and comb his hair. After a few months later, Rams announces a school-wide competition of artists in which hundreds of people, for everyone who wants to participate, hundreds of students from the boarding school, teachers, and even Ram's own art teacher, and only Ishan is still absent. The teacher starts to get nervous. Ara Jan tells him that his friend left the school before dawn at a time when Ram has given up hope that his favorite student and the whole comes to the amphitheater and sits down away from everyone, takes the paints his brother gave him and begins to paint what he went to see before the whole campus wakes up. Of the entire campus, and it turns out to be an amazing. That literally makes the teacher speechless. He's also been drawing something special. All this time drawing something special. The principal says that Mrs. Rooks, the guest judge of the contest, couldn't decide between the two. Between the two entries, she had to choose between the teacher's and the student's drawings, but after much deliberation, she made a decision and gave the winning entry to the U.S. News. The hall erupts in applause. The kids and the teachers applauding the young artist, only he hiding somewhere in the crowd and shying away. And shy of everyone's attention, his eyes are downcast. He pulls himself together and goes on the stage, where he gets an award from the hands teacher Ram, and then in tears embraces her mentor. Music. The semester ends and everyone goes home. Ishan's parents come to the boarding schools to meet the principal, who shows them the new issue of the school yearbook with their son's picture. on the cover and his portrait on the back. And in the US, we're all admired by students and the adults who once thought the boy is hopeless. The boy says goodbye to his teacher until the next school year and goes home for the next school year vacation. Have you ever had to face difficulties at school? Tell your story in the comments. Who knows, maybe it'll cheer someone up. And subscribe to our channel if you want to see more good and cool movie stories.